So, good afternoon. All right, let's try that one more again. Good afternoon. All right, I go by the name of Alfredo Valentin, but on these YouTube streets, I am known as the BK Apologist. And today is going to be part 2 of my lesson, The Conscious Community of Refutation. I had so many slides last night, I just couldn't finish. So, but I didn't want to, not give everything. So I want to give you the whole clip. Like you're getting everything, right? But as a quick refresher, though, all right, what is the conscious community? It's basically a loose-knitted community of black identity cults that barely agree with one another, but one of the few things they do agree on is we hate white people and they need to die, right? And anyone who sides with white people, they can get it too, which is us, the Christians, because they believe that Christianity is a tool used for white supremacy. So if you believe in Jesus and you are a practitioner of the faith, you are considered the ops, as we say in New York, right? You are an agent. You are COINTELPRO. You are actually against black people if you follow Jesus, right? And one of the accusations that they throw on us is that, well, you follow the white man's religion, right? How can you pray to the same God that your oppressors pray to? That can't be right. That's not true. I can't pray to that God. But of course, that's not the case. And, we can go into, the ancient attestation of the African presence in the Bible. We could talk about the Ethiopian eunuch who was actually a sub-Saharan Africa from the Nubian country of Moro. We could talk about how there was an early presence of Christians in Africa on the west part of the continent prior to the Portuguese. We could talk about how even during slavery, because of the slave narratives, the quotes of the actual slaves knew the difference between the bootleg nonsense that the slave master taught them versus actual Christianity. We could talk about all that today, but we're not. What we're going to do is claim and show the hypocrisy of the claim that they put on us. They say that we follow a white man's religion. No, they follow a white man's religion. In fact, at best, it's Greco-Roman speculative fan fiction, and at worst, it's European occult magic. And last night, we went through a series of different texts, the Hermetic texts. We talked about theosophy, and all these things are not linked to Africa, but it's linked to Greco-Roman speculative fan fiction. They were just freestyling, making stuff as they go along, because they couldn't even read the hieroglyphics at that time, or they just used straight European occult magic. So one of the things that they use as well, the Moorish, we heard of the Moorish temple science, right? We heard of the Moors, right? Well, the Moorish Temple Circle 7 Quran is composed of excerpts from the Aquarian Age Gospel of Jesus, the Christ of the Piscean Age, a text deriving from theosophy. This is not African spirituality. It is European occult magic, but the Moors will tell you otherwise. But look at their source material, okay? We have the Kabbalion, a study of the Hermetic philosophy of ancient Greece, of Egypt and Greece, written by the 3 initiates, okay? And it's a special shout out to our main man, Hermes Trismegistus. It seems like every time I look for the origin of their teachings, this dude keeps popping up, okay? But what's funny is the 3 initiates are really one initiate. William Walker Atkinson, a white man, right? Not that, again, but not against white people. I'm just using their argument against it, okay? So, while Atkinson's nascent life as a writer might seem to have been a dramatic shift, it brought together much of his past. His early interest in theosophy appears throughout his works in direct references to Helena Blavatsky and the use of the term secret doctrine. So he's using theosophy as his point of reference here to write this book. Early in this period, Atkinson wrote a self-described little volume called the Kabbalion under the cryptic pseudonym 3 Initiates. At the core of the Kabbalion were 7 axiomatic laws, such as the principle of correspondence and the principle of vibration, that were described as originating from the mythic Hermes Trismegistus, and carefully passed down through the ages from teachers to the select students. While the Kabbalion claimed to be ancient Egyptian and Hermetic, it was much more a product of modern American New Thought. So not only do they use European occult magic, they use good old American occult magic as well, all right? As times change, Atkinson's Kabbalion continued to have remarkable staying power with a wide array of seekers and aspirants. Many African-American thinkers took the Egyptian origins of Hermes Trismegistus, described in the Kabbalion, and cast it as distinctly African wisdom. So they took this Americanized European occult magic and threw some kente cloth on it and said, here you go, black spirituality. All right? Using the 7 Hermetic principles in works of fine art, literature, self-help, psychology, family therapy, and even bounty hunting. I don't know how you use bounty hunting for the... I'm just reading the text. I'm just saying. So, one of the pillars of the most modern iteration of the Kemetic community in New York is the House of Ma'at, led by their chief Kemetic priest, Jabari Osase. And if you go to his website, he has a Kemetic library, free PDFs that you could download. Look at one of the books that he has, the Kabbalion. This is a Kemetic library. It's not. It's Americanized European occult magic. But I follow a white religion. You follow a white religion, though, right? So, what else? What's another book that's being used? It's the 6th and 7th books of Moses. Has anyone ever seen these books? Growing up in the open-air book markets in downtown Brooklyn and in Harlem, USA, and in any black-owned bookstore, you're going to find these books. These books have been around forever, right? So I'm going to quote from this article, Other Books of Powers, the 6th and 7th books of Moses in Afro-Atlantic folk belief. Based loosely on 19th century German volumes, the De Laurent's edition of the 6th and 7th books of Moses is profusely illustrated with drawings of pseudo-Hebraic seals and talismans, and includes an anonymous essay entitled The Magic of the Israelites, an excerpt from the Glovakia of Solomon, the King of Israel, by Andrew Lupus, dated 1686, a track entitled Sefer Samaush Teflim, or The Use of the Psalms, for the Physical Warfare of Man, translated from the Practical Cabal by Gottfried Selig in 1788. And finally, another essay entitled Astrological Influence Upon Man and Magical Cures of the Old Hebrews. I didn't know the Old Hebrews had magical cures, but here we are. Taken from Dr. Bresci's work, The Transcendental Magic and Magic Healing Art in the Talmud. All this is found in the 6th and 7th book of Moses, right? Now, in this book, he interviews someone who's a practitioner of hoodoo. Has anyone ever heard of hoodoo, right? We're told that this is a indigenous African religion, right? But this is what this practitioner says. Hoodooism started way back in the time that Moses days, back in the old ancient times, 9,000 years ago. Now you see, Moses, he was a prophet like Peter and Paul and James. And he had quit being a prophet and started the hoodooism. What we call the 7 books of Moses, they're where hoodooism took about. So they asked this practitioner, well, where did you get this information from to do hoodoo? Like, well, the 6th and 7th books of Moses. Well, we just saw that the 6th and 7th books of Moses is a compilation of German occult magic. But we're told we need to leave the church and get with our religion. Hoodoo, that's us. No, it's not. It's not. In fact, this black Israelite New Thought theology was based on the works of French-American author and publisher William Laurent de Laurence, who made his name by translating and publishing magical works from around the Oriental world. His books have been widely circulated and remain highly respected among practitioners of Afro-Atlantic religions such as, ready, Santeria and Voodoo. De Laurent's works played critical roles in the genesis of 20th century alternative African American religions such as, drumroll please, Morris Science Temple's Black Islam, Rabbi Matthew's Black Judaism, and Leonard Howe's Rastafarianism. We're told that all these are indigenous black religions, but they all use high Germanic occult magic. This is the ghostwriter of all their theologies. Right? Rabbi Matthew, who's the precursor of what we now call the One West Hebrew Israelites, you know, the ISUPKs, the IUICs, here's the godfather of that. Rabbi Matthew used the Lawrence to write and create magical rituals and a Hebraic creed that allowed him to be filled with God's Spirit. Matthew based what he called his Kabbalistic science on the most popular of the Lawrence's books, the 6th and 7th book of Moses. Not the Torah. Ain't no precept upon precept here. It's more like presto changeo, right? That's what we're getting here. And they're telling you, leave the church for this. This is what you need. This is your religion, right? Now, has anyone ever read this book or seen this book? Very popular in the conscious community, right? Stolen Legacy, George G.M. James. This is from Contemporary Esoterism by Eagle Ashram and Kenneth Graham, page 55. Among the most important books of the Afrocentric paradigm is George G.M. James' Stolen Legacy. Among critics, the book is usually quoted as evidence for the low academic standards of Afrocentric studies. One of the more infamous parts of the book deals with Alexander the Great sacking the Library of Alexandria, an event generally seen as historically impossible. What is of interest here, however, is not the factuality of James' claims, but rather the history that he constructs with the use of esoteric sources. Later, he went into more detail as to how the Egyptian mysteries operated and how people were initiated into them. Most of this is standard material from where? Masonic and Rosicrucian writings. We talked about Rosicrucianism last night, right? The origin was based on a book of satire on a fictional person named Rosicrucian. It was a joke, it was a parody. They're using this parody as part of their paradigm, right? And the British historian Stephen Howe has claimed that Stolen Legacy is as, quote, much a mystic, ritualistic, and more specifically Masonic work as it is an Afrocentric one. Like, this is not about black. This is not about black spirituality at all. His major sources include Masonic, Theosophical, and Rosicrucian works. These currents sometimes overlap. For instance, Theosophists founded the first and only Masonic lodges to admit women, lauding the ancient Egyptians as originators of an esoteric wisdom and ritual which was passed directly to present-day cults and secret societies. Among these sources are G.I. Val's The Ancient Mysteries of Modern Masonry, V. Davidson's The Great Pyramid, Its Divine Message, Anne Besant's Esoteric Christianity, H. Spencer Lewis' Mystical Life of Jesus, and the Rosicrucian Digest. This is all the information that's in the book Stolen Legacy, a book that's basically like the Bible for the conscious community. And it's filled with non-African spirituality. But we follow the white man's religion, right? Describes a recurrent cycle of what he terms of incorporation and excorporation, right? When a party wishes to subvert the resources of the dominant system, they partake in what Fisk terms cultural excorporation, the process by which the subordinate makes their own culture out of the resources and commodities provided by the dominant system. This is central to popular culture and Fisk's model and to his enterprise, for he further posits that in an industrial society, the resources from which the subordinate creates subcultures are provided by the system that subordinates them. What he's saying here is what happened here with the conscious community. They took stuff from the dominant culture, right? And as we know, the dominant culture has been the European culture. And what were they subscribing to? Well, occult magic. So they thought, well, if we take their magic right? We're going to fight fire with fire. But we know that everyone's not going to agree with it, so we're going to blackwash this occult magic, throw a kufi on a dashiki, and we're going to call this black spirituality. Because we leave it as is, no one's going to believe it anyway. Right? And there's serious replications for this. Right? Because the Now Valley School of Afrocentrism is controversial. The findings and interpretation of mainstream Egyptology contradict and repudiate all or large parts of all its major concepts and contentions. It has been pointed out that there's nothing new under the sun of Afrocentric scholarship. All of its ideas are based on existing fringe historical ideas about ancient history. As we say, it's a fugazi. It's just not, you know, it's a $5 slum gold chain Rolex that you find in Canal Street in Manhattan. Anyway, the only difference is that the older fringe ideas worked on an assumption that ancient Egyptians were white, whereas Afrocentrism contends that the ancient Egyptians were black. It has even been said that Afrocentrism is merely Eurocentrism in blackface. That analogy can be extended to suggest that Afrocentric Egyptomania is simply a version of the older occult of pseudo-historical Egyptomanias of the Europeans. That's all it is. All they did was blackwash Dr. Strange, right? That's all they did. They gave Dr. Strange a wave cap and a dashiki, and we all should follow him now, okay? So everywhere you look at the original sources of this African spirituality, guess who we find, y'all? The white man. And again, we believe in the gospel. The gospel is for all nations. Amen. It's for everyone, right? We're all the Imago Dei. We're all images of God. But I'm using their arguments against them. You claim we followed the white man? No. You followed the white man. Heavy. All your sources. You're nowhere near the African continent. Which begs the question, are you even pro-black to begin with? Because I don't know about you, but there's no actual facts about the greatness of Africa that you have to make up therapeutic mythology. Because then you're saying that the white supremacists are right. There's nothing really real great about African people. And we know that that's why we got to use fantasy and cosplay, right? So there's that. So, second point, and this is from Vince Bantu in Comedism and the Gospel in Urban Apologetics, Restoring Black Dignity in the Gospel. In addition to claiming that the Bizrat gospel is the white man's religion, Kemetic communities commonly assert that the teaching of the church is an unoriginal imitation of the ancient religion of Kemet. We've heard this before, right? That we've plagiarized from the Kemetic religion. Now, we just showed that they themselves don't follow the Kemetic religion already. So it's already dead in the water. But let's deal with this. We've seen various memes like this, right? This is talking about Serapis, and that before there was Christ, in fact, Christ comes from Serapis. And it quotes a correspondence of Roman Emperor Hadrian, refers to Alexandrian worshippers of Serapis calling themselves Christians and bishops of Christ. So they'll use this to say, hey, see, your Jesus is not original. It's just a ripoff of Serapis. And they quote this letter from the emperor, right? So where does the letter come from? Right? When you have conversations with these people, you have to ask them, okay, I understand this is the claim that you're making, but where are you getting the information from? Most of the times, they can't tell you because they're just regurgitating what the meme said. But I got time, so I did some research. I got some time. The letter comes from this book called the Historia Augusta. It turns out to be a sign of great dishonesty. A closer analysis of the documents themselves proves that the majority of them cannot be authentic. It may be disputed whether the majority of the documents have been forged by the authors of the Historical Augusta or by their sources, but forged they are. These pseudo-documents serve to fill up to meager biographies. Their purpose is not to give facts, but to make up for the absence of facts. The Historia Augusta has no great taste for honest research. Thus, the Historical Augusta stands convicted of an extensive use of forged documents. This dissertation re-examines the origins, intent, and perceived historical value of the 4th century series of Latin imperial biographies known as the Historical Augusta. Over the course of the 20th century, the text was interpreted as a historical forgery created by a rogue scholar who took pleasure in deceiving most, if not all, of his audience into accepting at face value the text's false attribution to 6 fictitious biographers, its spurious imperial dedications, and its reliance on fabricated sources. This is where the letter comes from. It comes from this book. Right? In the last decade, studies have instead begun to suggest that many of the fraudulent elements of the Historical Augusta were not intended to deceive, but rather entertain knowledgeable readers by interpolating elements from the ancient novel into a biographical text. Anybody here remembers Mad Magazine? Yes. Right? It was a parody of the news of the day. Right, Alfred E. Newman. Right. That's what this book was for them. It was Mad Magazine for the 4th century. But then these guys pull a letter from these fabricated collection of sources and say, see, your Jesus comes from Serapis. Really? It comes from Mad Magazine? I don't think so. Another one. Has anyone seen memes like this? Right? Jesus is a ripoff of Osiris, right? Okay. This is from Following Osiris, Perspective of the Osirian Afterlife from 4 Millennia by Mark Smith. No ancient Egyptian source record how and what circumstances belief in Osiris arose. You don't even know where it comes from, but you're saying we ripped it off. You gotta know where it comes from before you can say I took it, right? This silence has left considerable scope for speculation about his origins, an opportunity which modern scholars have not been slow to exploit. Various theories have been proposed according to which Osiris was originally a god of agriculture, vegetation, or fertility. A chthonic deity, a pantagoddess, a jackal god, a personification of the deceased on the embalming bed, a deified human ruler, or an amalgam of all deceased kings, a generic royal ancestor. His cult, according to these theories, emanated from the Eastern Delta, Upper Egypt, or from abroad, whether Levant, Libya, or even Babylonia. They don't know where it originated or where it comes from. But you know I took it though. The Osirian myth can be reconstructed from the pyramid texts of the 5th and 6th dynasties. While the names of the actors and details of the incidents vary, this record is remarkably consistent over 2,500 years. Osiris was murdered and his body dismembered and scattered. The pieces of his body were recovered and rejoined, and the god was rejuvenated. Sounds just like the crucifixion, right, y'all? No. However, he did not return to his former mode of existence, but rather journeyed to the underworld, where he became the powerful lord of the dead. In no sense can Osiris be said to have risen, in the sense required by the dying and rising pattern. Most certainly, it was never conceived as an annual event. The repeated formula, quote, rise up, you have not died, whether applied to Osiris or a citizen of Egypt, signaled a new permanent life in the realm of the dead. Did Jesus stay dead? Did he stay in the underworld? He came back, didn't he? This guy didn't. So how were we copying the resurrection when he didn't resurrect himself? He's Lord of the dead. He never came back. Reanimation is not resurrection. Okay? Through these parallels, the individual Egyptian dead became identified with and addressed as Osiris. The myth and ritual of Osiris emphasizes the message that there is life for the dead, although it's of a different character than that of the living. What is to be feared is dying a second time in the realm of the dead. Osiris is a powerful god of the potent dead. In no sense can the dramatic myth of his death and reanimation be harmonized to the pattern of dying and rising gods. When you look at the actual evidence, it clearly contradicts what they like to tell us. Oh, we plagiarized. How? Jesus' body parts wasn't scattered. And when he was buried, he raised. Your God didn't. I think Jesus is winning here. Yeah. How about this character? Anybody know this guy? Right? They like to say that we ripped off Horus, or Heru. That's the proper name. So again, let's look at primary evidence. Let's see what the indigenous original practitioners said about this, right? Now, we're going to focus specifically on the virgin birth, because they're saying that we ripped off the virgin birth from Heru, okay? This here is the hymn to Osiris is preserved in a calcite stela dedicated by Amenemhes, who lived sometime during the first half of the 18th dynasty. So this is the quote on the stela, okay? This is the quote. Isis the effective, the protector of her brother who looked for him without ceasing, who traveled this land in mourning. She would not rest before she found him. She made a shadow with her feathers, creating a breeze with her wings, offering praise when her brother moored. She is the one who lifted up the lethargy of the weary-hearted, who received his semen, which created the air. Now, I know this is a family show, and we're not going to get into details, but ladies, if you've been inseminated, are you still a virgin? No. So where's this virgin birth coming from? Right? They say we ripped it off from them. It's not here. Primary evidence. As they like to say, it's written in the walls of Kemet. You're right. It is. And it's not saying what you're saying. Here's another primary text, the coffin text. Spell 148, the conception of Horus. In this text, the transformation is accomplished by recounting the details surrounding the conception and birth of the falcon god Horus. I'm going to now quote what the goddess herself is saying. She is talking here. Ho, gods, I am Isis, the sister of Osiris, who wept on account of the father of the gods, Osiris who parted the slaughter of the two lands. His semen is inside my body. It's a little graphic. It's a little graphic. That's a family show. We're trying to keep it, general audiences, right? But is she saying that she's a virgin? No, not at all. Now, we get this information from Plutarch. He was fascinated by the Egyptian religion and wrote a book on this topic called Concerning Isis and Osiris. He could not speak or read any form of the Egyptian language, so he had to rely on conversations through interpreters and speculations about Egyptian deities found in the works of earlier classical writers. Plutarch's narrative of the life and death of Osiris and the wanderings of his widow, Isis, is the one commonly used in popular books on Egypt mythology. The man couldn't read the glyphs. So he's going on hearsay, right? Not only that, much of Plutarch's Osiris narrative must have been based on stories and customs that were current in Egypt during the 1st century. So it's not that ancient. But this does not make it a reliable source for earlier periods. The myth of Osiris has been developing and changing for 2,500 years before Plutarch was born. But Plutarch's written sources can only take him back 600 years. So he has no, original monographs to help him make the story. In fact, Plutarch himself gave alternate versions of parts of the story, some of which he thought might be more authentic than others. So he's flipping it as he likes. So can we actually rely on what Plutarch is teaching us here? But this is part of the story that he writes. He says, watch this. The legend of Isis and Osiris is founded on perfect sexual union and perfect motherhood. Their mating is said to have taken place in the womb of their own mother, Nut, goddess of the sky. So not only was she not a virgin, she wasn't a virgin while she was in the womb. So how are you saying we're ripping you off? She wasn't even a virgin before she was even conceived. And this is coming from the greatest source on this story, right? Now, you guys have seen similar memes about this, right? That the Ten Commandments plagiarize from the divine laws of Ma'at, right? Specifically, the 42 negative confessions. So, let's do a compare and contrast, right? Context of the Ten Commandments. How are the Ten Commandments being used in Scripture? Two basic types of covenants existed in the ancient Near East. The parity treaty between equal parties and the Caesarean vassal treaty between a greater and lesser party. In Caesarean vassal treaties, the greater party, i.e. the Caesarean, provided benefits such as military protection and land grants to the lesser party. In response, the vassal owned the Caesarean financial tribute and consummate loyalty. Consequently, vassals could have only one Caesarean, for to take another lord or father would be tantamount to treason, right? The covenant Yahweh established with Israel at Mount Sinai exhibits striking parallels with Hittite Caesarean vassal treaties, which had 6 basic features: a preamble that identifies the Caesarean, historical prologue that recounts the previous relationship between the parties, covenant stipulations to which the vassal must agree, provisions for periodic reading and safekeeping of the covenant, witnesses to the covenant, and blessings and curses should the vassal either keep or fail to keep the covenant. The Sinaitic covenant contains all 6 of these characteristics. When you look at the book of Deuteronomy, what you're really reading is a contract between the Yahweh, the Caesarean Lord, and Israel, the vassal states. That's what Deuteronomy is. That's the context of Deuteronomy. So as a side note, when the Hebrew Israelites like to use Deuteronomy 28, right, to show that, oh, I know I'm in Hebrew because of the curses. I'm like, how's that? Because it's prophecy. No, it's not prophecy, it's a contract. Did you sign the contract? Because in order for a contract to be binding, you have to agree to the terms, right? Did you know that it was even a contract to begin with? That's free. That's free game. That's free game. So the 10 Commandments, in this context, is the covenant stipulations to which the vassal must agree to, right? That's what the 10 Commandments are. Now that you've been saved and rescued by Yahweh, right? You're already saved. Now that you're saved, this is what I expect saved people to do. These commandments, right? Now, what's the context of the negative confessions? Ancient Egypt was provided modern scholarship with some of the earliest extant records of a highly developed conception of judgment after death. A form of post-mortem judgment was present as far back as the Old Kingdom, beginning in the 3rd millennium BCE. The codification of the judgment of the dead did not appear until the 15th century BCE in the book of Going Forth by Day, the primary funerary literature of the New Kingdom. The core of the judgment scene was the weighing of the heart ritual. The book of Going Forth by Day, more commonly known today as the Book of the Dead, contains spells that address the judgment process. Chapter 125, specifically, the second Declaration of Innocence section, and chapter 30b-5 are the 2 spells that most directly impacted the ritual. 10 Commandments, stipulations of a vassal treaty. Negative confession is a spell. It's a magic spell in this thing called the Book of the Dead, or also known as the Perep Em Heru, right? They were meant to ensure the deceased passed judgment and entered the afterlife proper. They were, in essence, methods to work around the uncertainties and obstacles of a divine justice system which was dictated by divine order referred to as Ma'at. This article will show that the substantial use of magical means to ensure a triumphant result in the judgment hall reflects the relentless desire to secure a successful passage into the afterlife. There was no security of making it to heaven if you were a practitioner of this. You wasn't certain, so they had to figure out a way, a workaround to get into heaven, because we're not sure. We don't know, right? So chapter 125 is a long and intricate spell centered on allowing the deceased to enter the hall of judgment. The spell outlines the appropriate prayers to be said and how to declare one's innocence before the tribunal. The part that we shall focus upon is the second declaration of innocence. The second declaration of innocence consists of 42 lines, each addressing a different judge and a different offense. The deceased was meant to state the name of the judge and then deny the offense over which the judge presided. One of the magical components of the text was that it granted the deceased knowledge that the true name of each of the judges. In ancient Egypt, knowing a person's true name granted you power over them. As will be explored in greater detail below, the important element to retain here is that all of these offenses had to be denied for the individual to proceed into the afterlife. So this spell gave them access to the names of the judges. So when they declared their innocence to each judge, they will say the name of the judge first. Because if I can say his name, I got him. I'm in control. So whether or not I'm telling the truth, it don't matter now, because I know the judge's name, because I cast my spell. Because, again, I'm trying to get to heaven. The second declaration of innocence in the papyrus of Ani had two parts. While the first required the deceased to address each of the judges by name, the second required them to deny the offense that each judge presided over. The second component, the denial of the 42 misdeeds listed, allowed for a process of purification to take place. While it was likely that the deceased didn't commit all these misdeeds, it's also highly improbable that they didn't commit any. They weren't dumb. The people of ancient Kemet knew that they wanted to be good, they wanted to be righteous, but they knew that they were imperfect people, like we all do, if we're honest with ourselves. Okay? They knew that. The importance of knowing the deity's name could be at play in the second declaration of innocence. If the names of the judges presented in the second declaration of innocence were their true names and not aliases, by speaking their names, the deceased would have gained power over the judges. In other words, if one of the judges were to notice any irregularities in the deceased case, knowledge of their name could prevent the judge from speaking out. So if I say I never lied, and I know I did, but if I say his name first, he can't bring it up. So even though I'm saying I'm innocent, I'm not. That's why I need these spells to hook me up, all right? So the knowledge of the true names of the judges and how to address them therefore allowed the deceased the ability to further ensure their success by possessing the ability to exert power over the judges. Let me stop here. Does this sound like the Ten Commandments to you at this point? I can stop right now, right? You just close the doors, thank you for coming, right? By possessing the ability to exert power over the judges if needed, by possessing this power, the deceased had the ability to influence both tests and cover their bases. It is important to note that the text do not explicitly indicate that the deceased could exert control over judges. However, given the stated desire to hold control over the gods in chapter 39 and 24, it is not particularly difficult to believe that the deceased would use the power of the judge's true name to ensure a successful outcome if given the option. The control aspect might be superfluous, as the purpose of the second declaration of innocence is purification. Nevertheless, the Egyptians equipped themselves with every possible advantage to ensure success in their trial. They're trying to rig the game, ladies and gentlemen. If any wrongdoing were revealed, the heart, however slightly, would not balance against Ma'at. If the deceased was not able to cleanse themselves of all their misdeeds, they would fail. It was clear to the Egyptians that humans, even the righteous, were not perfect. Therefore, to assure the continuity of the righteous into the afterlife, they needed to deny and thus mitigate the flaws of being human through magic. Because in the Perep Em Heru, there's no space for atonement. The gods of Egypt are not going to forgive you. You need to be perfect on your own accord. But The Egyptians knew that they couldn't. So I needed something. So they created this litany of spells so that I can get over on these judges so I can make my way. Right? Not only are many of the alleged gospels, the alleged copies between the Bizrat and Kemetic religion unsubstantiated fabrications, but this entire line of thought is a modern Western argumentation that is alien to the Kemetic tradition of this religion's practitioners claim to uphold. None of this sounds like the Bible. The Ten Commandments is a stipulation of a contract. These guys were casting spells. So it's contract law versus hocus pocus. It's not the same. How are you saying it's the same? And also, with that context, we now know why these ancient Kemetic people, when they heard the gospel, took it so quickly. Because they didn't have atonement. They needed forgiveness because they knew as good as they try to be, they can never be perfect. And here comes the gospel. It's like, I know you're not perfect. Unlike your God, my God came down and took care of that for you. And what I need from you is your allegiance, not spells. I need you to bend the knee to the King Jesus. How's that coming from this ancient Kemetic religion? It's not. When you look at the actual sources, which they don't. You know what they look at? European, occult magic, and Greco-Roman speculative fan fiction. So now, I do not expect any of you to retain all this and use this when you go to the barbershop, to the corner store, or to the next family reunion, right? Because there's a lot of stuff. This is a lot of stuff, right? But what can you do? What are some apologetic practicals that you can carry with you today to help you when you have these kind of discussions? Well, first thing you could do is ask them to prove their claims. The burden of proof is the obligation to provide sufficient supporting evidence for claims that you make. We think as believers that we got to carry all the heavy lifting in these discussions. No. If they make the claim, the onus is on them. Yes, sir. It's on them. And the great thing about that is that you're not even saying they're wrong. All you're asking is, well, how did you get there? How did you come to that conclusion? Now, I gotta be honest, I've gotten into a lot of issues on the internet simply asking this question. And I know you go through the same thing. Well, how did you come to that conclusion? I'm not even saying you're wrong at this point. Explain what you're saying. Define your terms. Because you expect me, the Christian, to do that, right, when it comes to my belief. Well, turnabout's fair play, right? Ask questions. Because when you ask questions, you're actually in charge of the discussion. The ball's actually in your court when you're the one asking questions. A great book that helps us with having these discussions with people is Tactics by Gregory Koukl. And he says here, there are 3 reasons why gathering information is important. First, you don't want to misunderstand the person you're talking with. Second, you don't want to misrepresent him. Third, you don't want him to misunderstand himself, right? So when someone throws out a term, it's like, well, what do you mean by that? When you say this word, what do you mean? So that we don't talk past each other, right? I just want some clarity. Again, and it's great because you're not accusing them of anything. Like, I just want more information. I just want the information you give it to me to be as clear as possible, right? Asking questions is the simplest way to clear up confusion and deal with ambiguities. Your queries allow others to do more of the talking so you could do more of the listening, giving you a more precise picture of their point. Clarification questions also give you a chance to test the water without getting in over your head. They give you time to size up the situation and gather your thoughts. Quote, what do you mean by that? Is a question that you can use with virtually every challenge, even daunting ones leveled at you as a believer. Before you attempt to address any pushback, always ask for more information. You want to know exactly what the person thinks before you take any steps forward, right? What do you mean by ... Can you clear this up for me? Can you help me understand this? That way, you're not accusing them, but you're in control of the discussion at the same time. Do not be scared to say, I don't know. Be transparent. What's great about that is that you set the example for this discussion. Because if you're honest with what you don't know, you created a safe space so they can say what they don't know. You know, we could put the pride to the side and we could have honest dialogue. Be compassionate, not condescending. Right? We're not here to browbeat them and I have this amazing, compelling argument. I got 50,000 slides of death for you and your whole crew. What? Bring it. That's not the intent. It's not. Believe it or not, it's not. It's not. It's not. Right? Agree where you can. Agree where you can. The Kemetic community, the reason why they exist, there's a reason why they're doing what they're doing. They're actually fighting against some actual things, right? There is a marginalization of black and brown people. There is such a thing as white supremacy. There is such a thing as racism. It's true. Don't be scared to acknowledge that. Now, of course, we have a different answer for these things, right? The way they're going about answering is completely off base, but they're answering something that's concrete and real, right? They say that it's a prevailing perspective shared by individuals within the conscious community is that both continental Africans and African diaspora are subjugated to social conditioning or coercion by what is perceived as a global system of white supremacy. We live in a fallen world. If anyone understands that, it should be us, right? And in the fallen world, people are not only evil, they create and devise more new ways to do evil. We should know that better than anybody else. So when someone else brings that up, you're like, you know what? I agree with you. You're right. It's just how you're going about answering is not, right? Because their theology is based on revenge. Our worldview is based on redemption. That's the big difference. That's the line of contention between us and the Kemetic community. They want revenge. I want to be on top now, right? Which is very telling because what you're saying is, well, slavery is not bad as long as you get to do the enslavement, right? Oppression is not bad as long as I'm the one doing the oppressing. I'm king of the mountain. It's my turn, right? So quickly before I go, some book recommendations. Tactics by Greg Koukl. Of course, Urban Apologetics, Restoring Black Dignity with the Gospel. We have The Whitewashing of Christianity by Jerome Gay Jr. Vince Bantu, A Multitude of All Peoples. It's a great book. Afrocentrism by Stephen Howe. We Can't Go Home Again, An Argument About Afrocentrism by Clarence Walker. If you want to learn more about actual Kemetic religion, The Complete Gods and Goddesses of Ancient Egypt by Richard Wilkinson, and Religion and Ritual in Ancient Egypt by Emily Teeter. So at this time, I'll take a couple of questions. I got 2 minutes? Oh, well, I'm done. I'm actually done. So.